is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a marvelous day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. And today I want to talk about why immigrants view America differently than we do. And when I say we do, I'm talking about Black American descendants of slavery. We have had a different experience in America than anybody else. And it's not something that happened over a 50-year period. It's an experience that spanned hundreds of years, many lifetimes, and unbelievable changes and transitions in our lives and in this country. So we know this country better than anybody, including many of these white people, because our families were here before theirs were. So nobody can really come to this country and tell us what the country is. What they can do is tell us what their experience has been. But they can't give a definite interpretation of what this country is or is not. Therefore, they're way out of order to say what America has never been, Nikki Haley. These two are almost sympathetic figures to me because they seem willing to endure any kind of mistreatment, which we would call racist, in the effort to try to prove to themselves that they are accepted, they're in the package, and America does not see them as anything but an American. They say this even as incidents of racism against them are reported by the press and pointed out to them, sometimes by white journalists. Well, this happened to you, or that happened to you. When Ramaswamy was campaigning in Iowa a few months ago, he was in some kind of a fender bender in his car, and the police wouldn't even write it up like it happened. They were writing it up like some white person ran into him and didn't even apologize. And the police basically waved him off like, we don't care. And so they have incidents like this too, but they seem to want to believe the propaganda. Everybody really wants to believe that it's those Black Americans. They're lazy, they are violent, they are whatever white people have put out over the world that we are. So all you got to do is come to America, work hard, and you got it made. And they come here with that attitude. Now these are East Indians. It is unclear to me why they are so desperate to be the president of the United States or to be rulers in the United States. But they seem to have that on their minds. And then they haven't been here as long as the Chinese. And the Chinese you don't see the Chinese jumping up, running for president and trying to do all of this stuff. They've always been about building their own infrastructure, their own businesses, and now, trying to get in Ivy League schools. But they haven't been trying to run the political system. But these people want to believe the propaganda that America has put out there. And it's not just them. Africans do too. It's all of them. The Africans, the Asians, the Hispanics, all of them want to believe that Black American descendants of slavery are responsible for all of the problems in America. And that is what America has put out there over the airways in every other kind of way. It's those Black Americans. It's not because we held them in slavery. It's not because we had them in Jim Crow. It's not because we've had segregation and discrimination and oppression against them from the first day they set foot on the soil. None of that has to do with anything. It's just they are just terrible people. Black people are the bad guys and white people are the good guys. And it doesn't matter what white people do to them, they believe that. That's the whole thing. That's what's so crazy. The FBI and the Asians themselves say that white people are the #1 perpetrators of crimes against Asians. Now the Asians admit that, but yet it's still what's out there. Black people are bothering them. Most of us don't even come into contact with them. We come into contact with white people more than we do anybody. And those black people that they're encountering in those big cities are very often not even black Americans, they're other immigrants. Because I know they've had some incidents on the subway in New York City where African immigrants who could be just where African immigrants have perpetuated acts against Asians, sometimes just aggravation and harassment. But they think it's black Americans because they look enough like us for them to blame it on black Americans. And I'm not saying there aren't black Americans doing things in big cities, but especially in New York, I know that a lot of black people who are planning to stay up there move to the suburbs. They go to New Rochelle, they go to Mount Vernon, they go to Yonkers. Sometimes they go on Long Island or go to New Jersey. So they don't really stay in those inner cities with all of that junk going on. But back to the mentality of many immigrants. They want to believe America's propaganda. And the main reason, I think, is because they fear being treated the way black Americans are treated. They don't want to be treated like the perception that they have of how black Americans are treated. And that within itself should give them a clue about how America is. If black Americans are being treated so harshly, then that ought to give you some idea about what the country is about. But they stay in denial about what America is really about. It's just like the Kenyan comedian said about black Americans versus Africans. She said African Americans are woke. But she said that when Africans go to the West, when they go over to Europe and other Western countries, they think they're going to be received with open arms. And then when they get there and they find out that people are discriminating against them, they're surprised. They're surprised because they believe the propaganda. We know better than to believe the propaganda because we've lived the reality. But these East Indians in particular will go on television and defend America and say it's not racist, just like Ben Carson will do, even though they face racism themselves. So Philip Bump, who writes for the Washington Post, and I think in one video I said it was the New York Post, but he writes for the Washington Post. He follows Nikki Haley, and he wrote this article about Haley's politically useful denial of America's racist past. Nikki Haley had the nerve to say yesterday or sometime that America has never been racist, even as she said she faced racism growing up in South Carolina. And we don't have a hard time believing that. And so Philip Bump is saying that she's denying America's racist past. He was brought up in New York and his family moved to Ohio, which is the Midwest. But racism has permeated America no matter if you live north, south, east, or west, Midwest, Southwest, Southeast, Northeast, Northwest. It doesn't matter. You're going to face racism if you are a non-white person in America. That's just the way it is. Speaking on Fox's News, Fox and Friends on Tuesday, hours after her third place finish in the Iowa caucuses was finished, former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, was asked to respond to comments made by MSNBC host Joy Reid on Monday night. Was the Republican Party racist? No, we're not, Haley replied. We're not a racist country. We've never been a racist country. And she would know. She did not address the actual question, instead adding that the United States wasn't perfect and that she had experienced racism. But her goal, she said, was to lift up everybody, not go and divide people on race or gender or party or anything else. Oh, really? She's going to do all of it. She's going to single-handedly wipe all of this out. Well, good for her. Intentionally or not, Haley in those quotes succinctly summarized the often surreal race politics of the GOP. We can start with the claim that the United States has never been a racist country. Her quote, a claim that no serious person could defend. And he's right about that. And no white person who wanted to be taken seriously or who wanted anybody to think they were honest would say that America has never been a racist country. And that alone lets you know this woman has no business trying to be the president of the United States. She's not even able to be honest about her own American experience. And so because she can't be honest about her experience, she's trying to dismiss other people's experience. She doesn't have the moral compass to speak knowledgeably about something that goes to the heart of America, and that is racism and America's relationship with its most valuable citizens. Let's just face it, the people who did the most work are the ones who are the most valuable. Without slavery, there is no America. It might be something, but it wouldn't be this. So I'm not going to say she's not ready to be the president. I'm saying she's not fit to be president of the United States. You have to at least make some effort to be honest. And another thing to me, they haven't been here long enough to be trying to be the president. They first need to learn the country. They're getting off the plane planning to be president of the United States. How about you learn something first? So Philip Bump in this article is offering some free history information. He says, talking to Nikki Haley through his newspaper, Black people in the United States used to be enslaved, you'll recall. The first 3 censuses measured the size of the white population and the number of enslaved people, in large part to accommodate the Constitution's 3/5 compromise, boosting the power of slave states by allowing them to count 5 enslaved people as 3 people. There was also a category for non-white free people, but by 1820, non-enslaved black people were counted separately. Okay? Black Americans got the right to vote only after the Civil War, a conflict driven by the dispute over slavery. In many southern states, though, that freedom was constrained for decades by laws intended to limit how many black people could vote. That sat alongside other constraints such as segregated schools and facilities. So this is him schooling her, underscoring the fact that America has been a racist country. Those were not just incidents of racism that he mentioned. Those were laws. The 3/5 compromise was law. Slavery was law. Not allowing black people to vote was law. That's a part of the Jim Crow law. So he was telling her not only was America racist, America was legally racist. He pointed out racist statements by the Republican Party, saying Republicans in 2022 said the economic differences were because Black Americans don't have the motivation or willpower to pull themselves up out of poverty. Okay, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. A statement about an inequality that reflects a racist belief. In parentheses, he has, it is perhaps an improvement over the once popular response in the GSS, I don't know what that is, that the differences were because Black Americans have less inborn ability to learn. So we always get back to them being smarter, but we can never really prove it. Here it says, while Black Americans have worse jobs, income, and housing, and what they have here is don't have the motivation or willpower to pull themselves up out of poverty. Blacks have less inborn ability to learn, mainly due to discrimination. Those are the choices there that you could choose from. So on this chart, the green says we don't have the motivation or willpower to pull ourselves up out of poverty. And the purple line says we don't have the intelligence. We just don't have the ability to learn. And then the orange says mainly due to discrimination. So overall, about 60% of Democrats and Republicans say we have worse job, income, and housing because we don't have the motivation or willpower to pull ourselves up out of poverty. About 40% overall said it's mainly due to discrimination. About 25% overall said It's because we just don't have the inborn ability to learn. We were just born dumb. I'm not really sure what all these little circles on these points mean, so I'm not going to try to interpret it. But the Democrats have a spike up here on mainly due to discrimination. So I guess some of them acknowledge that discrimination plays a part in whatever we do, whether it's job, housing, or income. And the Republicans are pretty much consistent. They think that our worst job, income, and housing is due to a lack of motivation. Now, the Republicans really believe that. They really believe that. And there's always those that down at the bottom, the purple, who are always going to think, well, they just aren't smart enough. So he ends this article by saying, the Iowa caucuses took place on the federal holiday honoring Martin Luther King Jr. The holiday is a celebration of King's life and of the success of the civil rights movement in combating overt discrimination in American society. In recent years, Republicans have often latched onto King's famous quote about judging people not on the color of their skin, but the content of their character, as though this was an endorsement of ignoring differences based on race. Well, they're masters at twisting things around. But of course, King's speech and his life more broadly made very clear that his point was not that color blindness should be the default approach, but that he dreamed of a day when it could be. When King was alive, it's worth noting, he was far less popular than he is today, thanks to hostility from white Americans. So this is a white American pointing out to Nikki Haley that America has been and is a racist society. I just really think that these immigrants like Nikki Haley and Ramaswamy, whatever his name is, need to get their ass somewhere and sit down. They are not ready to be the president of the United States, and I would even say they're not fit. I say that, and I don't say it to be mean, but to be fit, you at least need to have some sense of honesty, and you need to have a grasp of a country's history if you want to be the leader of that country. So let me know what you think. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.